Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is Friday, the 16th of February 2024, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with economic stability in Pakistan, the need for a more robust economy for a country such as Pakistan, and a proper roadmap for the future as far as our economic landscape is concerned. Under the current political situation that Pakistan is confronted with, what should be the way forward for the political parties? Should they be having a consensus as far as moving forward together on an road to economic recovery is concerned, with the relationship with the IMF also and other lenders? That is extremely important for the coming months. In April, the SPA is going to end, and of course we need to go towards a new program with the IMF. What needs to be the policies that whichever government takes power in the next coming days will be doing together with other partners and with the opposition as well? How important is for the nation to be as one, at least as far as the political parties is concerned? This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns day 133 of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. As far as the casualties are concerned, 28,775 Palestinians, at least that number, has been brutally massacred by the Israelis, while 68,552, in fact more than that, have been injured. More than 17,000 children have perished as far as this conflict is concerned. There are indications of contacts between different countries, attempts to pressurize Israel to not go for the ground invasion in Rafah, as it has been gearing up to, and also to move towards a two-state solution. But Israel apparently doesn't seem to take heed of any of that. What will be, in fact, the future as far as Palestine is concerned, with around 1.5 million cramped in Rafah? Where will they go in case there's a ground invasion in Rafah? This and more will be discussed in our second story. Then we'll be talking about Manipur, where two people have been killed and scores of people who've been injured after security forces opened fire at a mob in one of their districts. Sporadic violence, of course, we know has been continuing in the region for quite some time. Close to 200 people have perished, have died since the fierce fighting broke out last May between members of the majority Mate and the minority Kuki communities in the state. That also borders Myanmar. Then we are going to talk about a man in the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, who was imprisoned for 37 years over false murder charges. Finally came out in 2020 and now sued the different organizations who led him to this incarceration for 37 years on a false charge, and now has been able to win $14 million from the city of Tampa as compensation for those lost years. Interesting story, we'll be highlighting that. Finally, we'll be talking about a new species, a skeleton panda that has been found in Japan. This is a squirt, as you can see, and of course lives in the marine life. Its distinctive skeleton-like body structure and black spots that also mimic a panda have made it particular with divers as well. But the research doesn't ascertain as to where this pattern comes from, whether this is a distinct evolution, or is there something else? Is this a new species? Well, maybe a new research will tell us about that. Let's begin with our show, and let's talk about economic stability, challenges that lie ahead, and how important is political conciliation as far as all the members, all the political parties are concerned, or maybe a charter of economy in order for the country to move forward in a more stable way. We've been joined by Dr. Khaqan Hassan Najeeb. He's a former advisor to the Finance Ministry, and he joins us live. Thank you very much to have joined us, Dr. Khaqan. A very, very long time since we had an interesting conversation, because I always call our conversations intelligent and interesting. Let's begin. Let's begin with the global economic situation. We have seen a report that recently came out that talks about the recession of major global economies, and that includes that of Japan and the United Kingdom, that have fallen into a remission in the second half of 2023. Does that bode as a warning for the developing nations, including Pakistan, for the future?
So, Omar, you've put quite a comprehensive intro together. So, starting with the global picture is one where there are some economies which are slowing. For example, the UK economy is in a technical recession. A technical recession means that over the last 2 quarters ending December 2023, the economy has shrunk. the GDP has shrunk. Similarly, in Japan, Japan is also in a technical recession, which means that over the last 2 quarters, the economy has shrunk. On the other hand, the US economy seems to be moving into a more soft landing scenario, which is a good scenario. There were bets that the US Federal Reserve, the central bank, would start cutting rates. That is the monetary policy easing sometime in May. Those bets have come down because the recent CPI yesterday is still more elevated than what was expected. So probably June, July seems to be the time where the easing would start. But with the economies contracting like the two earlier ones, and U.S. Inflation down into the threes after it had risen much beyond, I think the next 2, 3 months may be harder. But then we will see that to bring back the consumer, to bring back consumption, to bring back capital expenditures, the larger economies of the world, UK, Japan, US, would especially start cutting their federal policy rates and to spur the economy. So that's the kind of a global picture. Brent prices, oil prices are still hovering around $80. And that's why you partly saw a rise in Pakistan's diesel and petrol prices yesterday. So I think in a couple of months, we'll see some kind of tailwind on the global picture as we head out of the inflationary bout and into more expansionary nature. If you see the world stock market, especially the Nasdaq, which is the world tech market, the S&P and Dow, they've all done spectacularly well over the last 2 months. Markets are an indicator of what is about to come in the next few months. Markets are a leading indicator. So I think that's the picture. Of course, on the domestic front, we had an election. The nation voted a split mandate. There was an independent-led mandate. There was a mandate to the large two political parties, and then there was a mandate to the more regional parties. And the mandate is clearly one of working together to sort Pakistan's issues. That's how I look at it. But the split mandate, some people think, is harder to implement tougher decisions, harder to do the IMF program, harder to make more structural calls in the economy. But the good part is that the parties which have assumed a mandate at the center are also the parties which will be leading the four provinces. Sindh will be likely with the Pakistan People's Party, Punjab is likely to be with the PMLN, Balochistan would see a coalition of the two, and KPK would be the independent-led PTI government. So they're all there in that sense, and some of these parties would then be at the center. So, in one sense, it's a good thing that all the parties have a share. They can all play their role to move forward. The challenges for Pakistan still remain to be the same what they have. I've always advocated in being in an IMF program. I'm really glad I think the nation's caught up to that idea. So we are coming to an end of a standby arrangement, which will probably likely to end sometime March, April, hopefully after a successful review of the last tranche that we have to get, I think about
all
more
right,
than $1
Dr.
billion.
Khaqan, before we go towards the IMF and Pakistan-IMF relations, I'd like to understand something. You talk about the political parties that need to work together, but we see a lot of political polarization in the country, whether it be between the political parties, especially between the independents and the major two political parties. And of course, there is a certain design that I foresee as if there is not that sincere intention to move together forward towards even important causes such as economy. If you look at Pakistan's economic trajectory, Khaqan Saab, it has been fluctuating. And the government did take a timely tightening of external and domestic financing policy measures, also successful negotiations with the IMF that we were just talking about. Now that Pakistan is transitioning into this new government that is going to be formed in the next few days, and the possible new IMF program that we will, that of course you were also talking about when I interrupted you. Uh, there are chronic macroeconomic challenges that the government and our country is facing. A, in your point of view, how can we overcome them? And B, what are those major macroeconomic challenges?
So one thing is that, in a parliamentary form of government, we remember that the job of the opposition, whoever that may be, maybe it's the independent-led PTI people, is to keep a check on the government that is formed. So in that good spirit, they should keep a check on what the government is delivering, what the government is doing. On the government, of course, there falls a very, very heavy duty. If PMLN and PPP were to form a coalition and form the next incoming government, along with the regional party, the MQM, I think the onus of taking Pakistan out of the quagmire that we have been in solely rests with them, in the sense that they are mature parties. They have been in office for 16 months. So it is not that they are incoming to assume an office of the difficulties they don't know about. They very well know the economic challenges. So the immediate challenge as they take office is, one, to complete the standby arrangement, because the IMF seems to have decided to come to Pakistan after the formation of government, and start deliberation with the IMF on the contours of a new program. Um, I know we have been able to convince everyone through your media talks and through others, as well as through our writings and as our discussions with the politicians, that IMF program is a must. But I think what's even more important here is the second part, I think, which we haven't even started talking about, that writing of that program by the home team is even more important than agreeing to go into a program. Because you don't want to land into a program that is, again, not taking the ownership by the home country, putting the responsibility on the IMF, and then saying these are the dictates which are making us do these things. And then Pakistan's track record, 21 incomplete programs. 2013-16 remains to be the only complete program that Pakistan has ever done in its history. So, that's the second task. Can we design the program that is homegrown, is helpful to the country? And here comes recognizes the macroeconomic difficulties. The biggest macroeconomic difficulty right now, of course, is to fight the inflation specter in the country. Inflation has come down from 38% to nearly 29%. But that we have elevated the prices yesterday, and that may have an impact again. Now, here's my very, very important bit on inflation. Let's not tackle inflation on short-term measures. So why do I say that? We have raised our policy rate, the interest rate in simple terms, and we have brought down the private sector investment, private sector demand. And what you can see is that the car demand has fallen, the demand of energy has fallen, all kinds of demands have come down. But the problems are much deeper. So here's the take with the IMF as well as the upcoming budget. The fiscal consolidation, which means that the private sector borrowing, Omar, has come down. So the demand has come down. But there's another borrowing that is happening, right? 4,000 billion rupees were borrowed by the state or the government of Pakistan over the last 6 months. When 4,000 billion rupees are borrowed, that creates an inherent demand in the economy that is chasing the same kind of supply of goods, which have not improved because our productive capacity still remains low. So that has the most important macro fundamental, which is going to be through the budget that needs to be corrected. And then the third part of inflation bringing down is, so we have the monetary part, the fiscal part that I've hinted, is the third part is the energy efficiency. Price raising has to slow down. It will not come to an end. And it will only slow down if the energy sector losses, if the energy sector inputs, if the energy sector pricing, which means the tariff, both gas and electricity, the targeting of subsidies, all this ambiance is sorted out. So that's the third macroeconomic challenge for them. And the fourth one is the larger challenge that once you have a budget, you've done some expenditure reforms, you've put some new taxes, you are in a fund program, is that how do we actually raise the productive capacity of this economy, which creates growth in the following few years at least? Now, Omar, these are serious challenges. These are serious issues. My humble request to politicians who have recognized that going into an IMF is important is to recognize two other things. One, the essence of a homegrown plan comes through number two thing, which is where is your energy team, which is where is your finance team, where is your investment team, where is your privatization team. What I mean is not the political team. What I mean is the people who can anchor these areas to make that structural transformation. Now, the onus, squarely lies on the parties which are taking office, the parties which are taking lead, that they have to realize that just dependence on outsourcing our policy thinking to IMF, World Bank is not going to work. The local doctors have to do the local surgery. And that, with a lot of humility, I say there is an administrative setup which does administrative work. There is a professional setup which has to do this professional work. I think that piece and our think tanks not being able to contribute still remains missing. Here is a part that we have created, which is our SIFC, which is the implementation framework, which is the framework of coordinating a whole of government approach, which is a framework of going to the foreigners, going to the domestic guys and saying, we want to do this. Here is a framework of getting approvals, but approvals of what? Approvals of a new energy sector reform plan, approvals of Pakistan's expenditure reforms. But where is that plan? Where is that reform agenda that has seen, the tables of the professionals who understand that what kind of deep surgery can show a better result in the next 3
But I think, Dr. Khaqan, Dr. Shamshad Akhtar has done a commendable job during the coalition government. I saw her, initiating many reforms, including that in the FBI, that was much, much needed. And I hope those, those reforms continue in the whichever government comes, which brings me to a very, very important question. We have seen that over the last decades. Whenever a new government comes, Dr. Khaqan, whether the policies are good or bad, those policies are more or less adapted, let's put it that way, or maybe suspended to some end for for maybe political gains, for the greater good of the party in power. How important is the continuity of important reforms process in the economic sector that have been going on, in your point of view, and should that be a priority of this upcoming government?
So, Omar, I would even go further. I think it's the strengthening and the deepening of the reforms. If you've started a process of privatization, if you have, forged a plan, you've put together a plan which says that PIA's bifurcation is important. We put the same plan together, Omar, in 2016. I distinctly remember being on the table saying exactly the same thing. We need to have a PIA 1, PIA 2, put the bad debts in PIA 1. Many years later, we're still saying the same thing. Fair enough. A new FA has said the same thing. The no two doubts. Now we need to strengthen and deepen, which we missed after 2016, to move ahead. So fair enough, take that money, the state takes whatever 268 billion rupees, takes ownership. So move forward with that. On the energy sector, if you, have done tariff rationalization, so let's move forward and decide what is the fate of the energy sector companies. How do we get them into the private sector? Similarly, on the fiscal side, if you've designed a program of an FPR reform on the administrative side, separation, new policy boards. So now let's see some action on that, and let's see how the actual end goal. There is only one end goal, right? The end goal is that your FPR tax to GDP ratio today is at 9%. In the following years, the party which is probably going to lead office in Pakistan has said that we want to take it to 13.5%. Omar, that means 0.7% growth over the nominal growth. So let's say you have this administrative new reform plan that the current government is, trying to has put together rather. So how do we take that plan and how do we move to the end goal of increasing 0.7 or 0.8% of tax to GDP every year? How do we implement that? So whatever good the new incoming government finds, and again I keep saying SIFC is the continuity part in this. I think it will play the pivotal role of ensuring that these programs are strengthened, and I hope they do. But then operationalizing them with many hiccups that will come through as we try and do them. Um, and strengthening, and then taking IMF on board. You got to remember, we took a CD plan to them. We weren't able to do very well with that. IMF came back and said, you need to further refine. So, okay, the next government can further refine that plan, or the current government. So, here are the things of strengthening and deepening the reform process that has happened. And on the CD plan also, it was the same thing that I keep saying, that you can, take the stock of that 2,700 billion rupees and take part of that and get rid of it. But the problem is the 500 billion rupee flow. And IMF came back with the same thing and said, what do you want to do about the flow? So that's the deepening part. You're saying I have a flow plan of the stock. So IMF asks you, what's the plan on the flow? So the incoming government develops a plan on the flow, and maybe both of them come together. Again, I keep saying these things need very, really smart energy transition team, which should sit in the energy ministry. The MOE must then orchestrate this team to do this surgery in the next coming years. If business as usual is followed in the way we have been doing for decades, I would still be saying the same thing to you 3 years from today. And I don't want that Pakistan should go that way. The expenditure side reform, whatever you've done, design on the FPR, the outcome intended out of that has to follow through, because that is the money that is needed to bring down Pakistan's debt. This is the key to moving forward.
All right. Achieving a growth target higher than 2% is going to require not only maintaining these reforms that you've talked about, but also a political consensus to undertake long overdue structural reforms. Add to it, there's a report by the United Nations that says if Pakistan is to reduce the number of people living in poverty by 2030, as far as the SDG goals is concerned, a comprehensive SDG push comprising an integrated set of high-intensity economic reforms and accelerator pathways is required. How can this current government manage it? Do you feel that those who will be in the opposition will be supporting the government, or just for as we've seen many times in the past, just for political gains, they will not agree to it and the country will suffer?
So, Omar, I'm really glad. So, I think the other narrative, Omar, that needs to be built in Pakistan right now, and I'm really, really glad that you mentioned, is that the only way out of poverty that any nation on this globe has done is one, and that is to increase the pie, or what we call increase the size of the economy, or in more technical terms, the GDP of the country. That simply means manufacturing should expand. It simply means agriculture yields and productivity should increase. It simply means service sector should increase. And this should not come by putting in new monies, but it should come by productive capacity of the agriculture, manufacturing, and the efficiency of the service sector improving. So you're absolutely right in saying this, that once this macro stability is cemented that you're seeing today through the IMF, through the continuous measures, then Pakistan needs to start doing the surgical work also on improving Pakistan's long-term endogenous growth. Endogenous growth is, the growth that comes from within, improving procedures, deregulating the economy. Improving financial intermediation means that the financing reaches those people that are underfinanced. Pakistan has 5.2 million SMEs, 167,000 only have access to Pakistan's formal finance. So just see how much work the state bank really needs to put in to get to those, 1, 2, 3, 4 million figure on the SMEs. So productivity, deregulation, competitiveness, and then, markets have to start work. The agriculture market has to work. Like the telecom market works, there has to be an energy market. These are all the ingredients of creating growth through, the domestic reforms.
But
And
Dr.
then
Khaqan, that is what I really hope. The crux of it all is that we need a government and we need an opposition that needs to sit together and work together for the greater good of the country. And economy should be on the forefront as far as the greater good of the country is concerned. And there should be a unanimity of view when it comes to important issues concerning our economy. And I really hope, Dr. Khaqan, that this current government and the current opposition, whichever it is, works together for the greater good of Pakistan. We need that, and we need that. It's extremely important for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years that all parties concerned work together, at least for the greater good of the country. Thank you, Dr. Khaqan. We're a bit short of time, or else I would have continued our conversation. We'll of course be taking you back, inshallah, very, very soon. Thank you very much, sir, who have joined us after a very long time to talk about important issues concerning Pakistan's present and future. Thank you, sir. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns day 133 of the Palestine-Israel conflict, and whether on the one side we see attempts at some kind of end to this escalation of violence, or maybe a way forward towards a two-state solution. On the other hand, we see what is happening in the Nasser hospital, and the way Israel is also preparing itself for this on-ground assault on Rafah, where 1.5 million people are cramped in that small space. What is going to be the future of Palestine and the Palestinian people? For that and more, we've been joined in the studios by Naela Chohan Sahiba. She's a former ambassador, and she's right here with us. Dr. Naela Chohan, thank you very much to have joined us. Ma'am, let's begin with the state of the people in Palestine. In Gaza, these Palestinians are in a famine-like situation. The United Nations has said time and again that there is a huge risk of famine as far as the Palestinians are concerned. Is starvation of the civilians being used as a weapon of war by Israel?
Definitely it is, and it is a very grave situation, which is compounded with their continued air offensive. At this moment, there's a lot of effort going on to stop this atrocity. Many initiatives are being taken, but as far as the plight of the people of Palestine is concerned, it is beyond words.
We don't know if it would really not amusing, but disturbs me to a large extent. Is that everybody knows that the plight of the people of Palestine is beyond words. But what we are seeing right now is the Israeli army preparing itself to enter through a ground offensive in Rafah. That is the only place where the maximum Palestinians are cramped as we speak. They've already done the aerial offensive, and they are continuing with that. But now comes the ground offensive. The US says it is going to try to stop them. Other countries are trying as well. The Brazilian president denounces Israel's war against Palestine in the Gaza Strip as collective punishment. Do these statements matter at the end of the day? Shouldn't the key word be action, action, and action against the Israeli atrocities?
But some words are equally important.
Okay.
Exposing the wrongdoing is equally important. So we should not minimize the sentiments that are being expressed at international fora by different quarters. Action definitely, but action is basically implementation of the words. So words have to come first. What we say, political will has to be demonstrated by the concerned quarters to bring an end to this mayhem and to the atrocities.
Now, Naela Chohan Sahiba, the Washington Post reports, because I have to quote this, US President Joe Biden's administration and this is what they are saying, a small group of Arab nations are working on a comprehensive peace plan which includes a firm timeline for the establishment of a Palestinian state, quote unquote. This proposal has been slammed not only by Israel's national security minister, but also by the finance minister. And the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel will continue to oppose the unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state, as it would be a huge reward to unprecedented terrorism, quote unquote. What does that bode now if with these statements and these opposition for the future of the people of Palestine, for the future of the Middle East?
You see, you have to bear in mind the internal dynamics. Right now, as you are well aware, that leaders are meeting in Munich. And in that, there is Egyptian representation, the Saudi representation, Blinken is going to be there. From Israel, who are there? Their president and their foreign minister, not Prime Minister Netanyahu. So the question arises, why is Netanyahu not part of it? The reason, in my view, could be wrong, is that Netanyahu is now leading a very rightist, wing.
Extreme right wing, I should even say.
Yes, you could say that. And his own survival is at threat. All these statements, because he is a politician at the end of the day, and they are going into elections. So Netanyahu's survival is on that, because those who are supporting are extreme right wing Zionists. If Netanyahu shows any softness, he will lose his vote bank. He can ill afford at this moment when he is going into elections. So that is why he is making these bellicose statements. But what will be the ground reality remains to be seen. What comes out of Munich, because they are meeting today, and you are well aware that David Cameron has said that now the Palestine state should be recognized and made full member of the United Nations. And this proposal has been supported by many countries of the West. So it means UK, France, Germany, and USA also has given its green signal. Even Iran, which is not part of the Munich dialogue that is going to take place, has said that they are willing to go along with it. So there is that light at the end of the tunnel, but there are certain prerequisites, and the prerequisites are the internal dynamics of Palestine also, because as you know, due to political gamesmanship, Palestinians have been fragmented into groups. So there is PA, and then there is Hamas. How to bring them together, because Israel has said it is not going to negotiate with Hamas. Many Western countries endorse that point of view. So how do they now react? Mahmoud Abbas has said categorically that Hamas should now come to settlement with Israel. Hamas does not even recognize Israel. So just as Israel is not recognizing Palestine, Hamas also does not recognize Israel. But if they can come into some sort of understanding within Palestinian body itself, that how to, because Hamas is not a terrorist group, it is a politically elected group, because PA was basically more political wing and Hamas was the military wing, but they were also politically elected. So they are not non-representatives of the people, they are representatives of the people as much. But due to internal fragmentation, the enemy benefits from it. So I think at this moment the situation is very delicate, as I see. Israel has its own internal dynamics, due to which Netanyahu is making these statements and is saying, as you said, get into Rafah, ground offensive. You can see Egypt is building a buffer zone, because Egypt is cognizant of how Israelis have been behaving, and they are concerned that Israel will try to push Palestinians into Sinai, into Egyptian territory, which Egypt does not want. So they are making the buffer. Now if there is a buffer there, and here Rafah was basically a refugee city, it was supposed to be a safe haven for the refugees. Now that is being attacked. So where do they go? They cannot escape to Sinai, these armed forces are coming on this side, and now Algeria has also taken an initiative, a resolution in UN Security Council. South Africa, which had taken the case to ICJ,
has again asked
that look at the recent developments, look at how Israel continues to overlook the advice by ICJ, because ICJ as yet, you know, the deliberations will take 2-3 years, but ICJ advised that Israel should not commit atrocities which are beyond the threshold and come into the genocide convention, because genocide convention defines what level of atrocities would be legally called genocide. Now Israel is trespassing that, so it is falling into genocide convention. So if once it does that, then it will be in big trouble. So South Africa has brought this to the attention of ICJ. Algeria is making that resolution there. So at all quarters there is active diplomacy that's going on, and just this idea that the West has agreed to now talk about the Palestine state. So even if Netanyahu says no, which he has to say no if he has to survive, the President of Israel and their foreign minister are there to negotiate. So it's a very
doesn't that make the Israeli politics also divisive as far as decisions are taken?
It is very fragmented. It is very fragmented. Why do you think there were protests in front of Netanyahu's office when it was the hostage crisis? Because they said he is warmonger, he is not considering saving the lives of the hostages. So yes, Israel is very much fragmented, but unfortunately so is Palestine.
Then what needs to be done? I mean, you talk about the process in Munich that is going on. There are also the statements that Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Turkey, Egypt have taken out to tell Israel to stop the ground offensive in Rafah and work for a ceasefire. Then South Africa, we just discussed about that. The OIC has condemned the military aggression of Israel on Gaza and these indiscriminate attacks on Rafah as well. You say the statements are a beginning. What should be the end? What could be the end of those? Will this Munich, because there have been so many talks in the past as well, whether it be through the United Nations General Assembly, United Nations Security Council, there was a coalition of members of Arab countries that were going from pillar to post to discuss some kind of a solution to it. But what did they yield at the end of the day? Should we, put our hopes on the Munich meet?
Well, you see, all these initiatives that you have alluded to have contributed to positive developments.
Okay.
It didn't happen in one day.
Of course.
So when they were going from pillar to post, as you said, they were creating that sensitivity. Now that sensitivity is bearing fruit.
Okay.
And they are continuing to negotiate, because at the end of the day, peaceful negotiated settlement would be sustainable and durable. So that is going on. It is difficult to predict the outcome of Munich, but somehow I feel more confident in this development.
All right, let's hope that then something comes out of it. Then what happened? You've seen what happened to the Nasser hospital, not the first hospital to be bombarded the way, and then they say they're looking for
Hamas.
of course, and those Palestinian fighters. And then this is not the first hospital. We've seen the incursions in other hospitals as well. What did that yield? What will this yield? Will this be the last of the hospitals? What will be the fate of all the patients who are there, which were given assurances that they will not be targeted, but in fact they were at the end of the day?
So that exposes Israel's hypocrisy, because earlier on also, you remember how many hospitals have they attacked, and every time the Indonesian hospital, the other hospitals, they have been attacking, and they said no, we are targeting just Hamas, we are just targeting what they call terrorists. In effect, they are targeting innocent people, they are targeting civilians, they are targeting Palestinians, not Hamas. And this is just a pretext, and they continue to do so. So their words belie their deeds. And how far can you continue telling, the same lie over and over again? So now the world is not willing to buy this argument that Israel is presenting.
But Naela, the world is still backing Israel. A lot of important global players are still backing Israel with military aid, with financial aid. Shouldn't cease or a pause in that bring Israel to to its senses maybe?
Hopefully, you're right that there is tacit and visible support to Israel, but now even Biden has made that statement that you just referred to, that Israel now has to be more careful on how it is moving on the ground. And USA now, for the first time, has warned Netanyahu. So that is a positive indicator.
Okay.
I hope that now, despite all the atrocities, despite all the suffering, there may be some light at the end of the tunnel.
Let's hope for that light at the end of the tunnel, because when you look at the number of casualties, it's staggering by any amount.
I know.
When you look at the way, not just the casualties, the way even those people who are still somehow standing on their feet are being targeted by the lack of water, food, medicine, basic necessities, and the fear, the psychosis that is prevalent amongst the children, 17,000 of whom have perished. This is something that will take decades for Palestine to come out of.
There is no justification that for 1,200 people that Israel claims died, they have killed 29,000 people. There's no ratio there.
There's no ratio. And just look, and the number of injured, almost 69,000.
Yes, yes.
I fail to see why and how this happened, and I just hope, like you said, that better sense prevails amongst the big powers that can make that change, that can pressurize Israel, and that moods such as that in Munich and others reap the dividends, and finally we see the state of Palestine being made, and the people of Palestine, at least those who are still remaining or those who have still some kind of land on them, to continue with their lives somehow in some kind of normalcy. I just wish and I hope, inshallah, that is all we can say. Thank you very much, Naela Chohan Sahiba, former ambassador and foreign policy expert, to have joined us, to have talked to us on this very, very important topic. Let's come to our last stories very quickly. The first concerns Manipur, where 2 people have died and scores have been injured in clashes. And this is something that has been going on since quite some time. We all know about this clash between the 2 groups, that is that of Methi and minority Kuki communities in the state. We all know also that this borders Myanmar. We also know that thousands are still displaced in relief camps. We know that over 200 people have died since last May in this fierce fighting between the 2. And the thing is that in this whole, there's a lot of politics at play as well. There's a lot of backing by the BJP government of one group and the other group that feels neglected, and that gives to a rise of more tensions, and we see that continue to happen. Let's hope also with elections in India underway, maybe some kind of sense will prevail, although I don't foresee that, but who knows, maybe something good might come out as far as Manipur is concerned. But as we speak, the violence continues. As we speak, the number of casualties also increase. Next, let's take you to the United States of America, where in Florida, a man who was imprisoned for 37 years for a murder he did not commit finally got out in 2020, and now he has sued the Tampa state, and he will be getting $14 million in compensation for all that he had suffered during these 37 years. He will be getting $9 million this year, $3 million next year, $2 million in 2026, according to the city documents. Robert Dubois is the name of that person. He spent 37 years in a Florida prison for a 1983 rape and murder he did not commit. Of course, it wasn't until 2018, with the help of Innocence Project organization, that prosecutors agreed to give that case another look. Now that they have more, intense examination methods, just like DNA analysis. It was found out that he was not the person behind it, but 2 others who were still serving jail were, and in fact that has changed everything. The woman Grams was sexually assaulted and beaten to death in August of 1983 as she walked home from a job in a Tampa restaurant. So finally, after 37 years, ladies and gentlemen, some kind of justice did prevail, and he is getting this 14 million, which I don't feel is a just compensation for 37 years, but nevertheless, it is some kind of compensation. Finally, a new species, skeleton panda, has been found in Japan. This skeleton panda, C squat, as you can see in the parallel images on your windows, has distinctive skeleton-like body structure and panda-like spots as well. Although a lot of researchers who have researched this say that they don't know what the origin of these panda-like spots are, whether it is evolution, whether it is genetics, or whether it is a new species altogether. Nevertheless, it's a very interesting species that has been discovered, and of course it puts those scientists who who discuss marine life even more interested in this whole new species that has come up. More and more species will also come up, because this is evolution, this is genetics, and that is how things evolve. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's news, and we'll see you inshallah on Monday with news story segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. It's the weekend. Have a wonderful one, but stay safe. Allah Hafiz.